Hello, seekers of shadowed histories, and welcome back to Grim Histories for Sleep. Tonight, our path leads us deep into the brooding forests and tightly knit villages of medieval Europe, specifically to 15th century Germany, an era where faith and fear walked hand in hand, and the line between the natural and the supernatural was terrifyingly thin in a world lit only by fire and shadowed by superstition. The unknown was often equated with the malevolent, but our focus tonight is not on a monster lurking in the external darkness, but on a terror that grows from within, and the way a community's dread can transform a familiar face into a symbol of ultimate evil. Tonight, we don't just explore a medieval village, grappling with unexplained misfortunes. We inhabit the skin of one of its unfortunate souls, as an inexplicable illness begins to twist your reality, your very appearance, and the fearful whispers of your neighbors start to shape a monstrous new identity for you, that of the werewolf, the man-beast of darkest legend. So, as the shadows lengthen and the familiar world around you grows still, we pose this chilling question: could you survive? Not a beast in the woods, but the beast your own community believes you have become. Could you endure when your strange, debilitating sickness marks you as a creature of the night, when every villager's glance holds the terror of the hunt, and the bonds of kinship curdle into suspicion and murderous intent? If these journeys into the heart of historical dread offer you a strange kind of solace, an escape into the atmospheric chills of the past, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Grim Histories for Sleep. We deeply appreciate your fellowship in these nocturnal explorations. And, as ever, we invite you to share in the comments where you are listening from and what time the shadows fall in your part of the world. It connects us as we prepare to step into a past that feels both distant and disturbingly familiar. Now, settle in. Let the modern world and its certainties fade like a dying ember. The flickering candlelight of a bygone age, the scent of wood smoke and rising fear, and the suffocating chill of a suspicion that turns deadly await you. Your ordeal in Wolfdal is about to begin. The year is 1497. The air in the village of Wolfdal, nestled like a forgotten secret deep within the dense, whispering expanse of Germany's Black Forest, carries the scent of pine, damp earth, and the ever-present wood smoke from hearths warding off the chill of early autumn. You are Elias, a young villager, once as vibrant and unremarkable as any other soul in this isolated community. But of late, your world has begun to shrink, to warp, under the weight of an unseen affliction. A persistent, gnawing ache behind your eyes is your constant companion, a dull throb that bright lights and loud noises seem to aggravate. Your skin feels too tight, stretched taut over your bones, and an unnatural warmth radiates from you, a fever that ebbs and flows, but never truly leaves. More disconcertingly, patches of coarse, dark hair have begun to sprout on your arms and back, thicker and more bestial than anything you've known. Your first challenge is not an external threat, no marauding beast or hostile lord. It is the dawning, terrifying realization that something is profoundly, inexplicably wrong within the confines of your own body. It is the subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the way your own family looks at you. Your mother's worry, frown deepening, your father's gaze lingering a moment too long on your changing hands, your siblings' uneasy glances when they think you aren't watching. These are the first tremors of an earthquake that threatens to swallow your world whole. The unease is beginning, not just within you, but around you. Your days in Wolftall, once marked by the familiar rhythms of field and forest, are now increasingly circumscribed by the insidious progression of your unseen affliction. Life in a 15th century German village is demanding, a constant cycle of labor dictated by the seasons. You rise with the dawn to tend the family's meager strips of land, to chop wood, to mend tools, or to assist in whatever communal task is at hand. Repairing the village weir, clearing a new patch of forest for cultivation, or strengthening the palisade against the ever-present threat of wolves, both literal and, as you are beginning to fear, metaphorical. There is little room for idleness, and even less for prolonged sickness, if a family is to survive. In your modern world, such symptoms, the persistent fever, the aching joints, the unusual hair growth, perhaps even a growing sensitivity to light that makes you squint against the sun, or strange, fleeting pains that feel like your bones are reshaping themselves, would trigger a visit to a doctor, a battery of tests, a diagnosis, and a course of treatment. Illness, while still a trial, is largely understood as a biological malfunction, a chemical imbalance, an invasion by microscopic organisms. But here, in 1477, Wolftall, the understanding of the body and its maladies is vastly different. Sickness is often seen as an imbalance of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Or it is a sign of God's displeasure, a punishment for some hidden sin, either your own or that of your family. Sometimes it is whispered. It can be the work of malign spirits, of demonic influence, or a curse laid by an enemy. Your mother, her face etched with worry, plies you with herbal remedies, infusions of willow bark for the fever, poultices of comfrey for the aches, pungent teas brewed from ingredients gathered in the deepest, oldest parts of the Black Forest by old Greta, the village's midwife and herb woman. These concoctions, brewed with desperate hope, fill your small, smoky hut with their earthy, often bitter aromas. But they offer little relief. The illness tightens its grip. The new hair growth is perhaps the most visually alarming, both to you and to those around you. It is not just on your arms and back, but you notice it thickening on your chest, even on your face, darker and coarser than before. You try to hide it, wearing your tunic even in the stifling heat of your fever, pulling your cap low. But the itching, the constant irritation of your skin, is a torment. Your sleep is plagued by vivid, disturbing dreams. You're running through the forest. Your senses preternaturally sharp, the moon a cold, white eye in the sky. Sometimes you wake with dirt under your fingernails and a vague, unsettling memory of having been somewhere, done something, though you cannot recall what. Could it be sleepwalking, brought on by the fever, or something else? Your behavior, too, is subtly changing, shaped by your suffering. The constant pain makes you irritable. The confusion of your fevered mind sometimes leads you to snap at your siblings or stare blankly when spoken to. Your heightened senses, a curse rather than a blessing, make the everyday sounds of the village, the clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the shouts of children, the barking of dogs, an almost physical assault, the smell of roasting meat, once a delight, now sometimes turns your stomach. You find yourself seeking solitude, retreating to the quiet dimness of your family's hut, or wandering near the edge of the vast, shadowed forest, simply to escape the overwhelming sensory input of village life. These changes do not go unnoticed. In a small, close-knit community like Wolftal, every deviation from the norm is observed, discussed, and filed away. Your attempts to hide your symptoms only make you seem more secretive, more furtive. The worried glances from your family are now mirrored in the eyes of your neighbors. You catch them looking at you, then quickly looking away. Their conversations sometimes dropping to a whisper as you approach. You feel a profound sense of isolation creeping over you, a chilling premonition of being cast out. Your own body has become a source of fear and shame. You scrutinize your reflection in a pail of water, searching for the familiar contours of your own face, but increasingly seeing a stranger staring back, his eyes too bright with fever, his skin stretched and unhealthy, the shadows beneath his cheekbones deeper. The fear is not just of the illness itself, but of what it might mean, of what you might be becoming in the eyes of others, and most terrifyingly, in your own. You are losing control. And in a world where control is so precarious, this is the greatest fear of all. One crisp morning, as the village stirs, a cry of alarm goes up from the western edge of a Wolftal, near where the forest crouches, dark and ancient. Old Man Hemmel, one of the village elders, whose small flock of sheep is his pride and livelihood, has found one of his finest ewes brutally killed during the night. It was not the work of a common wolf, he claims, his voice shaking with rage and fear. The animal was not merely killed and partially eaten. It was savaged, torn apart with a ferocity that speaks of unnatural strength, of a rage beyond simple hunger. The tracks around the carcass are unclear in the dew-damp grass, blurred and confusing. A shadow of collective fear falls over Wolftal, darker and more chilling than the encroaching autumn. And you, in your fevered, aching solitude, feel a cold dread that has nothing to do with your illness and everything to do with the sudden, sharp intake of breath from your father as he hears the news, his eyes instinctively, if briefly, flicking towards you. The brutal killing of Old Man Hemmel's ewe sends a tremor of fear and anger through Wolftal. Livestock is the lifeblood of a medieval village, representing food, wool, wealth, and survival through the harsh winters. An attack by a common wolf, while always a concern in a village tone, Portuguese for so, likely a typo for so or as, close to the vast black forest, is one thing, but the savagery described by Hemmel, the sheer violence of the kill, speaks to something more, something that resonates with the darkest fears and oldest superstitions of the community. More attacks follow in the succeeding nights, each mirroring the first in its ferocity. A goat belonging to the cooper is found with its throat torn out. 2 of the reeve's best pigs are slaughtered in their sty, their bodies mangled. Panic begins to take root in Wolftal, a creeping vine of dread that tightens its coils around the heart of the village. Men patrol the perimeter at night with torches and makeshift weapons, their faces grim, their eyes darting nervously into the shadows. The women bolt their doors earlier, whispering prayers to Saint Hubertus, patron saint of hunters, or leaving offerings of milk and bread at the edge of the forest to appease whatever malign entity lurks within. Father Dietrich, Wolftal's priest, a stern, gaunt man whose faith is as unyielding as the forest oaks, addresses the villagers from the pulpit of the small stone church. His sermons, usually focused on sin and repentance, now take on a darker, more urgent tone. He speaks of God's tests, of the devil's minions, who walk the earth in many guises, seeking to prey upon the faithful. He warns of hidden evils within the community itself, of sin unconfessed that might draw such calamities upon them all. He does not yet name a specific culprit, but his words fan the flames of fear and suspicion, encouraging the villagers to look for a source, a reason for their misfortune. And it is then that the first tentative seeds of suspicion begin to find fertile ground in your direction. Someone, perhaps young Greta, who lives near the forest edge, remembers seeing a shadowy figure wandering near the woods on the night of the first attack, a figure that, in her fear-sharpened memory, seemed too tall, too hunched, too unsettlingly swift for a normal man. She cannot be sure, she says, her voice trembling, but it was on the same night that you, Elias, had been tossing and turning in your fever, perhaps even crying out in your sleep. As your mother later anxiously recalled, could you have been sleepwalking, drawn by the moon, by your illness, towards the forest? You have no memory of it, only the vague, disturbing dream fragments of running, of heightened senses. Your visible symptoms, once objects of pity or quiet concern, are now recalled with new, sinister significance. The unusual hair growth, is it not like the coarse pelt of a beast? Your occasional fits of confusion or agitation, born of fever and pain, are they not moments when some other, wilder nature attempts to break through? The way you sometimes recoil from strong smells or seem to hear things others do not, are these not the heightened senses of a predator? This is the insidious nature of superstition in a community gripped by fear. There is no concept of innocent until proven guilty, no demand for verifiable evidence as a modern mind would understand. Instead, a narrative begins to form, woven from fear, circumstantial details, and the reinterpretation of innocent or ambiguous actions through a lens of malevolence. The evidence against you is not concrete, but emotionally potent, and it begins to accumulate like damning weight. You hear the news of each fresh attack with a sickening lurch in your stomach. You know you are ill, grievously so. You know your body is behaving strangely, that your mind is often clouded by fever. But a killer of livestock? A savage, bloodthirsty beast? The thought is monstrous, alien to your own understanding of yourself. Yet, a sliver of doubt, cold and terrifying, begins to worm its way into your own mind. What if your dreams of running through the forest are not dreams at all? What if during those periods of lost time, those fevered fugue states, your body is indeed driven by some force you cannot comprehend or control? The first pointed questions, the first overtly suspicious glances from villagers who were once your friends, your neighbors, cut deeper than any physical pain. Old man Hemmel, his eyes red-rimmed with grief and fury, fixes you with a long, hard stare as you pass, his lips moving in what looks like a muttered curse. Children who once played near your family's hut now fall silent and scatter as you approach, their mothers pulling them away with fearful urgency. One evening, as you return from gathering firewood, a task that now leaves you breathless and trembling, you overhear a hushed conversation between two village women drawing water at the well. Their backs are to you, but their words carry clearly on the still evening air. His eyes, did you see them in the twilight yesterday? One says, almost like a wolf's they look. And the way he moves, so quiet, despite his sickness. The other shudders. Father Dietrich says such afflictions can be a doorway for things. Their words strike you like a physical blow, like a wolf's eyes. The seed of suspicion has not just been planted, it is beginning to sprout, its tendrils reaching out to entangle you in a net of fear and accusation. You hurry away, your heart pounding, the wood forgotten in your arms, the cold sweat of a new, more terrible fever breaking out on your skin. It is no longer just your body you fear, but the minds of your neighbors and the monstrous image of yourself that is beginning to form within them. The overheard whispers at the well are a chilling harbinger. In the days that follow, the subtle unease that had rippled through Wolfdal in your presence transforms into a palpable, suffocating blanket of suspicion. There is no privacy in a medieval village like yours. Houses are small, built close together, their thin wattle and daub walls doing little to muffle sounds or secrets. Daily life is lived largely in common, in the fields, at the communal well, in the small crowded church. Everyone knows everyone else's business, their habits, their strengths, and their perceived weaknesses. Reputation is a fragile currency, easily devalued by gossip and fear. In such an environment, once suspicion takes root, it can spread like a virulent plague, and to be the subject of that suspicion is to become an outcast within your own home. You are now openly, constantly watched. When you step outside your family's hut, you feel the weight of unseen eyes upon you. Conversations cease abruptly, heads turn away, doors that were once open to you now close quietly as you approach. Children who once might have offered a shy greeting now stare with wide, frightened eyes before being quickly pulled indoors by anxious parents. The few villagers who still dare to speak to you do so with a strained politeness, their words carefully chosen, their gazes darting nervously as if afraid of being seen associating with you. Even your own family struggles. Your mother's face is a mask of perpetual worry, her prayers more fervent, her herbal remedies now administered with a trembling hand, as if she too is beginning to fear what she is trying to cure. Your father is often silent, his brow furrowed, the easy camaraderie you once shared replaced by a heavy, unspoken tension. Your siblings alternate Between fear and a bewildered pity, they are too young to fully comprehend or articulate your attempts to live normally, to carry out your chores, to contribute to the village, are thwarted by this wall of silent accusation. If you try to join the men heading to the fields, a sudden awkwardness descends, and tasks are found for you that keep you isolated. If you offer to help mend a fence, your assistance is politely but firmly declined. Your illness, which saps your strength and clouds your mind, makes even these simple interactions an ordeal. A stumble due to dizziness, a moment of confusion brought on by your fever, a pained grimace as your joints ache, all are now interpreted through the darkest possible lens. He is weak. He is losing his human senses. The beast within is growing stronger. Sleep, once a brief respite, becomes a torment. You dread the nights, terrified of what your body might do, while your conscious mind is lost in fevered dreams. Will you sleepwalk again? Will you cry out, uttering sounds that might be misconstrued as inhuman? You try to stay awake, fighting off exhaustion until you inevitably succumb, only to wake with a start, disoriented, covered in sweat, your heart pounding, a fresh wave of anxiety washing over you as you try to recall if you left your pallet, if you made any sound. The loneliness of your small, dark corner of the hut at night is an almost physical presence, a cold companion to your fear. The paranoia is a constant companion, whispering insidious doubts. Are they watching your hut now? Is someone listening? At the door? Who can you trust? The bonds of community, once your bedrock, have become chains of suspicion. Every shadow seems to hold a hidden observer. Every rustle of leaves in the wind sounds like a footstep. You feel hunted, trapped not by physical walls, but by the fear in the eyes of everyone you have ever known. You find yourself scrutinizing your own reflection more often, desperately searching for reassurance, but seeing only the progression of your illness, and perhaps a faint, terrifying echo of the monster they believe you to be. One afternoon, a new wave of terror ripples through Wolfdal. Young Agnes, the baker's daughter, a child of perhaps 6 years, goes missing. She had been playing near the edge of the forest, as children often did. Despite recent warnings, panic erupts. The entire village, including a reluctant and visibly ailing youth, is called upon to search. For hours, they comb the woods, their calls echoing through the trees. Just as dusk begins to settle, casting long, menacing shadows, Agnes is found. She is physically unharmed, but hysterical, cowering beneath a large oak, her clothes torn, her face streaked with tears and dirt. When she can finally speak, her words, choked with sobs, paint a terrifying picture. She babbles of being lost, of hearing strange growling sounds, and then of seeing a thing, a hairy beast man, with eyes that glowed like embers in the gloom of the forest. It didn't touch her, she says. It just watched her, its breath coming in ragged snarls, before it melted back into the shadows. As the child speaks, her small finger trembling as she points vaguely towards the deepest part of the woods, you feel every eye in the assembled crowd turn slowly, inexorably, towards you. Her description, born of a child's fear and imagination, is vague, yet in the charged atmosphere of Wolfdal, It is damning. A hairy man, glowing eyes, near the woods. All eyes are on you, Elias, and in their depths you see not concern for a lost child, but the horrifying certainty of your monstrous guilt. The watchful eyes have found their focus. The incident with young Agnes acts as a tipping point for Wolfdall. The child's terrified, incoherent ramblings about a hairy beast man solidify the vague suspicions and fearful whispers into a near certainty in the collective mind of the village. The livestock killings were bad enough, but a perceived threat to a child, even one that resulted in no physical harm, galvanizes the community into demanding action. The village elders, grave-faced and deeply troubled, convene an urgent meeting. Your name, Elias, is on everyone's lips. In medieval society, particularly in isolated rural communities, the word of authority, whether it be the local feudal lord, though Wolfdall is largely autonomous, owing allegiance to a distant count, the village reeve, or most significantly, in matters of spiritual or unnatural concern, the parish priest carries immense weight. Father Dietrich, as Wolfdall's spiritual shepherd, is the natural figure to turn to. His interpretation of events, his pronouncements on matters of faith and the supernatural, can shape belief and dictate action. Early werewolf beliefs, while varied across Europe, often intertwined the condition with divine curse, demonic possession, or a pact with dark forces. It was not yet the systematically defined and persecuted crime that witchcraft would become in later centuries, but it was a terrifying affliction that communities felt compelled to address, often brutally. The elders, accompanied by a small, grim-faced delegation of villagers, including the still furious old man Hemmel and the baker, Agnes's father, approach Father Dietrich. They lay before him their fears, the catalogue of misfortunes that have befallen Wolfdall, and the mounting evidence that points to you. The priest listens intently, his expression severe, his fingers steepled before him. He has seen your worsening condition, heard the whispers. He has also, perhaps, consulted what few learned texts or letters from other clergy might have reached even this remote parish, texts that might speak of lycanthropy, of men who believe themselves to be wolves, or who are believed by others to take on such forms. He agrees that the matter is grave and requires his direct intervention. You are summoned, not to a trial in any formal sense. There are no lawyers here, no impartial judges in the way a modern mind conceives them. You are brought before Father Dietrich in the cold, stone confines of the village church, the very place where you were baptized, where you have prayed, where you have sought solace. Now, it feels like a tribunal. The elders are present, their faces stern and unforgiving. A small crowd of villagers has gathered outside, their anxious, fearful murmurs audible through the heavy oak door. The examination is a terrifying ordeal. Father Dietrich, his eyes burning with a mixture of righteous concern and grim suspicion, questions you about your illness, your dreams, your whereabouts during the nights of the attacks. Your answers, weakened by fever and fear, sound hesitant, confused, perhaps even evasive to their ears. Your pleas that you are simply sick, that you remember nothing of these supposed nighttime wanderings or transformations, are met with stony silence or a sad shake of the priest's head, as if your denials are merely the cunning of the beast within, or the confusion of a soul already lost. He then proceeds to look for signs, the supposed physical markers of a werewolf, according to the folklore of the region. He examines your hands, looking for hair on your palms, or for fingernails that are strangely shaped, perhaps reddish or claw-like, all common superstitions. He scrutinizes your teeth, looking for an unnatural sharpness or length. He observes your reaction to holy symbols, holding a crucifix before your face, sprinkling you with holy water. Any flinch, any sign of distress, which could easily be a reaction to fear, to the cold water, or a symptom of your neurological illness, like a seizure or a being triggered by stress, is noted, interpreted. You endure this with a mixture of terror and profound humiliation. Your body, already a source of so much pain and confusion, is now being treated as an object of monstrous curiosity, a vessel for an unholy affliction. Every touch, every probing question, every scrutinizing gaze feels like a violation. You want to scream, to run, to somehow make them understand that you are Elias, their kinsman, their neighbor, suffering from a terrible sickness, not a ravening beast, but your voice is a choked whisper, your pleas lost in the overwhelming weight of their fear and certainty. Finally, after what seems an eternity, Father Dietrich steps back. A heavy silence fills the church, broken only by your ragged breathing and the distant, anxious murmur of the crowd outside. He makes the sign of the cross, his face grave. "My children," he says, his voice resonating in the stone chamber, addressing the elders, but ensuring his words will carry to all of Wolftal. This is a heavy burden that God has laid upon our village and upon this young man, Elias. He looks at you, not with malice, but with a kind of sorrowful conviction that is almost more terrifying. It is clear that he is afflicted. His illness has opened a door, and something unholy has taken root, whether it is a curse, a demonic visitation, or the true and terrible transformation into the werewolf of legend. I cannot say with certainty, without further prayer and observation, but the danger to his soul and to our community is undeniable. His words fall like a judge's sentence. He doesn't explicitly condemn you to death, not yet, but he declares that you must be strictly confined, especially during the hours of darkness, and most particularly during the nights of the full moon, which is approaching. You are to be isolated for the village's safety, while Father Dietrich undertakes rituals of prayer and attempts at spiritual cleansing. They will pray for your soul, he says. But as you are led from the church, the fearful, hostile faces of the villagers parting before you, like water around a leper, you know that their prayers will be less for your salvation and more for their own protection from the monster they now unequivocally believe you to be. The word of authority has spoken, and it has sealed your fate, transforming your sickbed into a cage. Father Dietrich's pronouncement, though couched in terms of spiritual concern and the need for observation, effectively sentences you to a living entombment. There are no specialized institutions for the mentally or supernaturally afflicted in 15th century Wolftal, no concept of humane containment or medical treatment for conditions deemed beyond the understanding of common folk or local healers. Those considered dangerous, mad, or like you, touched by some unholy influence, are typically dealt with through stark, pragmatic means: isolation, restraint, and often profound neglect. Your cage of fear is not built of iron bars in a distant dungeon, but of rough-hewn timbers and terrified conviction right here in your own village. You are removed from your family's hut, despite your mother's weeping pleas and your father's stoic, downcast gaze. The villagers, their fear now sanctioned by religious authority, select an abandoned shepherd's hut at the very edge of Wolfdal, hard by the gloomy eaves of the Black Forest. It is a small, dilapidated structure, barely more than 4 crumbling walls and a leaking thatch roof. Its single window shuttered and barred, its door reinforced with new, heavy planks and a formidable wooden bolt. This is to be your prison, your place of observation and prayer. The physical discomfort of your illness is now compounded by the misery of your confinement. The hut is cold, damp, and filled with the musty odor of decay and disuse. Your bed is a pile of moldy straw in one corner. A bucket serves for your needs. Meager rations of bread and water are left outside the door once a day by a fearful villager who refuses to meet your eye or speak a word. The loneliness is a crushing weight, a palpable entity that shares your wretched space. In your modern world, isolation is recognized as a form of torture, detrimental to mental and physical health. Here, it is considered a necessary precaution, a way to protect the community from the monster they believe you to be. Your illness, of course, does not abate. The fevers still rack your body, leaving you drenched in sweat and shivering uncontrollably. The strange, coarse hair continues its unsettling growth, a visible testament, in their eyes, to your ongoing transformation. The aches in your bones and joints intensify, sometimes making it an agony to move, and the periods of confusion, the sleepwalking, the disquieting dreams, these continue, now witnessed not by concerned family, but by the furtive, fearful glances of those who bring your food, or by any villager, brave or morbidly curious enough to peer through a crack in the shutters during the night. Each night is an ordeal. The approaching full moon, which Father Dietrich warned must be a time of particular vigilance, casts its pale, accusatory light through the gaps in the decaying walls. You dread its coming, not because you believe you will transform into a wolf, a concept that still feels alien and monstrously unjust to your own sense of self, but because you know your captors will be watching, interpreting every twitch, every moan, every rustle in the straw as confirmation of their deepest fears. You try to stay awake, to fight the fevered delirium, to maintain some semblance of control, but exhaustion and sickness invariably claim you. Sometimes you awaken with a start, your heart pounding, convinced you have heard the villagers whispering outside, their voices a low, menacing hum. Are they discussing your fate? Are they planning something more permanent than this confinement? The fear of what they might do, driven by their escalating terror, is a constant torment. Other times, you might wake to find you have thrashed in your sleep, perhaps cried out, or even found yourself standing, disoriented, in the middle of the hut, with no memory of how you got there. Each such incident you know, will be reported, magnified, and added to the growing ledger of your supposed monstrosity. The sounds of the village, once familiar and comforting, are now distant, filtered, and imbued with a sense of menace. You hear the church bell tolling for services you can no longer attend. You hear the distant shouts of children playing, a painful reminder of the life you have lost. You hear the barking of dogs and wonder if they are barking at shadows or at the beast they sense confined nearby. The silence from within your hut is broken only by your own ragged breathing, your occasional groans of pain, and the skittering of rats in the thatch, your only companions in this desolate cage of fear. Then, one morning, the news filters in with your meager ration of bread, delivered by a particularly pale and trembling young man. Another livestock attack. Old man Hemmel again. 2 more sheep savaged, torn apart with the same unnatural ferocity as before, but this time it happened while you, Elias, were securely locked away in this hut. The door bolted, the shutters barred. A flicker of desperate hope ignites within you. Surely, this must prove your innocence. Surely they must see that whatever haunts Wolfdall, it is not you. But the young man simply shoves the bread through a slot in the door and flees, refusing to meet your gaze, his silence more damning than any accusation. The cage of fear holds you fast, and logic, it seems, has no key. The news of a fresh livestock attack, while you are supposedly under secure lock and key, should, by any rational measure, cast serious doubt on your guilt. It should prompt the villagers, or at least Father Dietrich and the elders, to reconsider their accusations, to look for another culprit, another explanation for the terror that grips Wolfdall. In a world governed by logic and objective evidence, this would be a turning point, a moment for reevaluation. But you are not in such a world. You are in a 15th century village steeped in superstition, where fear has already written its own narrative, and all subsequent events are merely twisted to fit its horrifying plot. Instead of exonerating you, the attack during your confinement only serves to deepen the villagers' conviction of your supernatural power and malevolence. How could such a thing happen? Their fear-addled minds, egged on by the more superstitious, or perhaps malicious among them, conjure a host of terrifyingly implausible explanations. Perhaps you did not merely sleepwalk. Perhaps you transformed into a smaller, more bestial form, a creature capable of squeezing through an impossibly tiny crack in the wall, or a gap in the thatch, leaving no trace. Or maybe, they whisper, your wolf spirit, your demonic familiar, can leave your body while your human shell remains imprisoned, free to roam and wreak havoc. Some even suggest a pact with the devil, granting you powers beyond mortal comprehension, allowing you to project your evil will across distances, to kill without even being physically present. Confirmation bias is a powerful force. Once a community believes something so fervently, especially something that explains their deepest fears, all evidence is bent to support that belief. Contradictions are not seen as reasons for doubt, but as proof of the cunning and deceitfulness of the evil they are confronting. Your confinement, rather than proving your innocence, now becomes a testament to the terrifying extent of your supposed powers. See, One villager might say to another, their voice hushed with awe and terror, even locked away, the beast finds a way. Its evil knows no bounds. More evidence accumulates, each piece more ludicrous, yet more damning than the last. A tatter of dark, coarse cloth, vaguely resembling the worn wool of your tunic, is found snagged on a thorn bush near the site of the latest kill. It matters little that many villagers wear similar rough-spun garments, or that the cloth could have been there for weeks. In their minds, it is yours. Your desperate cries of pain or fear, overheard by those guarding your hut, are reinterpreted as the howls of a wolf or the guttural utterances of a demon struggling within you. Your fevered ramblings, when you are delirious and not yourself, are parsed for hidden meanings, for blasphemies, or admissions of guilt spoken in the tongue of the damned, the children of the village, their imaginations already inflamed by the story of young Agnes and the hairy beast man, now report seeing shadowy, wolf-like figures flitting at the edges of their vision, always in the direction of your hut. These are no doubt figments of fear, the play of moonlight on trees, but they become corroborating testimonies. Even your own family is pressured. Are they sure you were in your bed all night during previous attacks? Did you never speak of strange appetites, of a love for the deep woods, of dreams of running free under the moon? Leading questions, fueled by communal terror, can easily distort memory, plant seeds of doubt even in the minds of those who love you. You experience this onslaught of illogical proof with a despair that verges on madness itself. How do you fight against shadows, against beliefs that defy all reason? You try to point out the impossibility of their claims. I was locked in. The door was barred. How could I have done this? But your pleas are met with knowing, fearful looks. The devil has many tricks, Father Dietrich might say, his face grim. A true werewolf is a master of deceit, its human form a mere disguise for the beast within. Your rational arguments only make you sound more cunning, more dangerous, as if you are trying to trick them, to lull them into a false sense of security before you strike again. You are caught in a nightmare of their collective making, a world where reality is fluid, shaped by fear and superstition. It is a horrifying form of gaslighting on a communal scale. They are defining your reality, your identity, and it is the identity of a monster. The weight of their implausible certainty is crushing, suffocating. There seems to be no escape, no appeal to reason that can penetrate the armor of their terror. One evening, as the sun bleeds into a bruised, purple twilight, a new, more strident voice rises in the village. It is Conrad, a burly, often belligerent farmer who lost a valuable ram in one of the early attacks and has been vocal in his calls for harsher measures. He claims, his voice ringing with a conviction that electrifies the fearful villagers gathered in the square, that he saw you, not your spirit, not some shadow, but you, Elias, in your full, monstrous, wolf-like form, leaping the fence of Hemmel's sheepfold just last night. His eyewitness testimony, however born of fear, delusion, or perhaps even malice, is about to escalate your ordeal to a new, terrifying level. Conrad the farmer's voice, rough and laden with a conviction that borders on hysterical, cuts through the twilight gloom of the village square like a sharpened axe. He stands on the steps of the small church, a torch flickering in his hand, casting wild shadows that dance on the fearful faces of the assembled villagers. He is a man known for his stubborn nature and a simmering resentment ever since losing his prize ram. Whether his accusation stems from genuine, fear-induced delusion, a desperate need to find a scapegoat for his loss, or something more malicious, its effect on the already terrified community of Wolftal is immediate and profound. I saw him, Conrad bellows, his arm jabbing dramatically towards your wretched hut at the edge of the forest. Last night, under the accursed moon, it was Elias, but not Elias, a great, hairy beast, its eyes glowing like coals from hell. I saw it leap Hemmel's fence with unnatural speed. I saw it tear into the sheep with fangs and claws that no man possesses. His words, delivered with such theatrical certainty, paint a vivid, horrifying picture that aligns perfectly with the darkest werewolf folklore. He adds lurid details, the creature's guttural snarls, its immense strength, the way it seemed to melt back into the shadows as he approached with his pitchfork. It matters little that his account might be embellished or entirely fabricated. In a community starved for answers and desperate to name the source of its terror, such a vivid eyewitness testimony is like oil thrown onto a raging fire. It sweeps away any lingering doubts, any rational considerations about the impossibility of your escape from a barred hut. The beast, they now believe, is not just cunning, it is a shapeshifter of terrible power. You are, of course, not present to hear Conrad's initial, fiery denunciation. You are still locked in your cold, damp prison. But the roar of the crowd that follows his speech, a sound of mingled fury and terror, reaches you even there, a terrifying premonition of what is to come. Soon enough, you are dragged from the hut, blinking in the torchlight, your body aching, your mind clouded by fever and despair. You are brought before the assembled village, a grim audience baying for your condemnation. Conrad repeats his accusation, his eyes blazing with a fanatic light as he points directly at you. That is the man, he shouts, or the beast that wears his skin. I swear it on my immortal soul. The horror of that moment is absolute. To be confronted by such a confident, detailed lie, or a delusion so powerful it has become truth in your accuser's mind, is to feel the very foundations of reality crumble. You try to speak, to deny it, to plead your illness, your confinement. I was locked away. I could not have been there. I am sick, not this thing, but your voice is weak, hoarse from disuse and illness, easily drowned out by the angry clamor of the crowd. They see your protests not as the pleas of an innocent man, but as the desperate lies of a cornered beast. Your fear, your trembling, your wild, fevered eyes, these are all further proof of your guilt. The historical context is crucial here. In an era without forensic science, without a deep understanding of psychology, or the fallibility of eyewitness testimony under duress or strong emotion, a confident accuser especially one who could tap into existing fears and superstitions, held immense power. Personal disputes, old grudges, or simple mass hysteria could easily escalate into deadly accusations, particularly when the alleged crime was supernatural in nature. Defending oneself was an almost impossible task. You look for a friendly face in the crowd, a flicker of doubt, of support. You see only fear, hatred, and a grim, righteous certainty. Even Father Dietrich, who had earlier advocated for prayer and observation, seems swayed by Conrad's passionate testimony and the overwhelming mood of the village. His face is troubled, but he offers no immediate intervention on your behalf. The village elders nod grimly, their decision seemingly already made. The sensory details of this confrontation are seared into your memory. The flickering, unreliable torchlight, casting monstrous shadows, making familiar faces seem alien and predatory. The roar of the crowd, a beast in itself, hungry for a victim. The smell of sweat, wood smoke, and unwashed bodies, mingled with the sharper, metallic tang of collective fear and rage. Conrad's face, contorted with his fervent accusation, mere feet from yours. The utter helplessness of being unable to make yourself heard, to make them see the truth through the red mist of their terror. You are no longer Elias, their neighbor. You are the werewolf, the embodiment of their darkest nightmares, and they are ready to tear you apart. The pointed accusation has hit its mark, with Conrad's damning testimony hanging heavy in the air and the mood of the villagers escalating towards violence. Father Dietrich and the village elders know they must act swiftly to maintain some semblance of order, however skewed their justice might be. A formal trial, with defense and due process as a modern mind would understand it, is out of the question. What unfolds is more akin to a ritualized lynching, a trial by fear, where the outcome is all but predetermined, designed not to discover truth, but to confirm the existing belief in your guilt and appease the terrified community. Ordeals by fire or water, sometimes used in earlier centuries for various crimes, were becoming less common for accusations of this nature by the late 15th century, often frowned upon by higher church authorities as unreliable and superstitious. Though this did not always stop desperate local communities. Instead, tests of piety or the accused's reaction to sacred objects and rituals were frequently employed, particularly when demonic influence or unholy transformations were suspected. The belief was that a creature of evil, a servant of the devil, could not bear the touch of the sacred, or would betray itself through some unholy reaction. You are dragged into the center of the village square, the crowd parting before you, their faces a mixture of hatred, terror, and a grim, almost religious fervor. The trial begins. Father Dietrich, his face stern, holds aloft a heavy wooden crucifix, its polished surface gleaming in the torchlight. In the name of God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, he intones, his voice cutting through the menacing murmur of the crowd. If there be any unholy spirit within this man, Elias, let it recoil from this sacred symbol of our salvation. He thrusts the crucifix towards your face. You are weak, feverish, terrified. Your natural instinct might be to cringe away, from any object suddenly pushed towards you, especially in your agitated state, or perhaps a sudden wave of dizziness from your illness causes you to sway or stumble. Any such reaction, a flinch, a cry of surprise or pain, a moment of disorientation, is immediately seized upon by the onlookers. He shies from the cross. Someone screams. The beast cannot bear its holy light. Next, a pail of murky water is brought forth. Father Dietrich dips his fingers into it, muttering a Latin blessing, transforming it, in the eyes of the faithful, into holy water. He flicks it at you. The cold droplets strike your fevered skin, making you gasp and shudder involuntarily. Again, the crowd erupts. He writhes at the touch of holy water. It burns him. It matters not that any sick and terrified individual might react similarly. Your reaction is filtered through their pre-existing conviction. They might force you to try and recite complex prayers, the Pater Noster, the Credo, while under extreme duress. Your mind, clouded by illness and terror, struggles to form the words. You stumble. You hesitate. Your voice cracks. He cannot speak the sacred words. A villager crows triumphantly. The demon chokes him. Perhaps the most grotesque part of this trial by fear involves the mauled carcass of one of Old Man Hemmel's sheep, dragged into the square for this purpose. You are forced to approach it, to stand over its bloody, ravaged form. The stench of death and congealed blood is overpowering, and in your weakened, nauseous state, you gag, perhaps even retch. This, too, is proof. The beast is shamed by its own savage work, or conversely, it revels in the scent of slaughter. Some might even invoke the ancient superstition of cruentation, the belief that a murdered body will bleed afresh in the presence of its killer. They watch the carcass intently for any sign of new blood, and if a fly lands on it, or a breeze stirs a loose flap of skin, their imaginations will supply the rest. Throughout this horrifying charade, you are acutely aware of the hostile eyes fixed upon you, dissecting your every movement, your every expression, searching only for confirmation of your monstrosity. The sensory details are overwhelming. The cold, hard feel of the crucifix thrust before your eyes, the sting of the holy water on your hot skin, the coppery smell of blood from the dead sheep that turns your stomach, the oppressive silence of the crowd as they wait for you to betray yourself, punctuated by their sudden, condemnatory shouts. Each test is designed for failure, or rather, for an interpretation of failure that fits their narrative. Your illness itself, your physical weakness, your mental anguish, all the natural responses of a sick and terrified human being become irrefutable signs of your demonic nature, your werewolf essence. The trial by fear is a self-fulfilling prophecy, a ritual designed to solidify communal belief and justify the terrible sentence that is surely to come. And as Father Dietrich gravely observes your reactions, his face growing ever more convinced of your unholy affliction, you know that this farcical process is drawing to its inevitable, terrifying conclusion. You have failed every test in their eyes. The verdict is clear, with the evidence from the trial by fear deemed conclusive in the eyes of Wolftal's terrified populace and its grim-faced arbiters. Father Dietrich steps forward. The flickering torchlight casts his gaunt features into sharp relief, his shadow looming large and ominous. A hush falls over the village square. An expectant, bloodthirsty silence. You stand before them, trembling, exposed, your last reserves of strength drained by your illness and the preceding ordeal. The punishments for those deemed to be werewolves or otherwise supernaturally afflicted and dangerous varied greatly across medieval Europe and throughout different periods. Unlike the later, more systematized witch trials, which often had prescribed, albeit horrific, legal frameworks leading to execution, the response to a suspected werewolf in an isolated 15th century village like Wolftal could be more ad hoc, driven by immediate fear and local custom. Banishment was one possibility, casting the afflicted out to perish in the wilderness. Execution by methods such as hanging, beheading, or even burning, though the latter was more commonly associated with heresy and witchcraft, could occur, especially if mob justice overwhelmed any formal authority, sometimes, particularly if a clerical figure believed there was a chance for the soul's redemption or that the affliction was a form of demonic possession rather than an inherent, irredeemable evil. Attempts at exorcism or prolonged, brutal confinement might be chosen. Father Dietrich raises his hands. My people of Wolftal. His voice is solemn, heavy with the weight of his pronouncement. We have witnessed tonight the clear signs of a terrible affliction, a dark shadow that has fallen upon one of our own, and through him has brought terror and suffering to our village. He looks at you, his eyes holding a mixture of pity and stern condemnation. Elias, son of Gregor and Matilda, it is the judgment of God, made manifest through these signs and the suffering of this community, that you are indeed bound by an unholy pact or possessed by a spirit of the beast, that which turns man into werewolf. A collective gasp, followed by a low murmur of grim satisfaction, ripples through the crowd. Your own heart plummets. The sentence, for the safety of this village, and for the chance, however slim, of wresting your immortal soul from the clutches of the enemy. Father Dietrich continues, you are hereby sentenced. You shall not be immediately put to death, for the Lord is merciful and desires the repentance of sinners, even those so grievously ensnared. A small, treacherous flicker of hope might ignite within you, only to be instantly extinguished by his next words. But neither can you be allowed to remain among us, a danger to body and soul. Therefore, you shall be taken to the old hermit's cave, in the deepest part of the Black Forest, a place shunned by God-fearing folk. There you will be chained. I and other men of prayer will perform the sacred rites of major exorcism to drive out the beast that dwells within you. This will be an ordeal for you and for us. If, by God's grace, the demon is cast out and your human soul restored, then perhaps, in time, a path to redemption can be found. But if the beast proves too strong, if the exorcism fails, he pauses, his gaze sweeping over the terrified, expectant faces of the villagers. Then you shall be left there, chained, for God himself to deliver the final judgment, be it through starvation, the elements, or the true wolves of the forest whose nature you have so monstrously emulated. This is our judgment. May God have mercy on your soul and on Wolftall. The sentence is a horrifying blend of false hope and certain doom, an exorcism, which in this era could be a physically and psychologically grueling, even life-threatening procedure. And then, if that failed, which given your actual illness, it almost certainly would in their eyes, you were to be abandoned, chained like an animal, to die a slow, agonizing death in the wilderness. It was, in effect, a death sentence delivered in stages, cloaked in the language of spiritual concern. The crowd murmurs its approval. Some shout, "Justice," others, "God's will." Old Man Hemmel and Conrad the farmer nod with grim satisfaction. Your own family, standing at the edge of the crowd, your mother openly weeping, your father's face a mask of stony despair, can do nothing. To protest would be to invite suspicion upon themselves. The weight of the sentence is crushing. The terror of the impending exorcism. The horror of being abandoned to the wilderness, chained and helpless. You feel a coldness spread through your limbs, a numbness that goes beyond your physical illness. This is the finality of your community's rejection, the ultimate consequence of their fear. You are no longer Elias. You are the werewolf of Wolftall, an object of terror and ritual, to be tormented and then discarded. The grim faces of the elders, Father Dietrich's solemn yet terrifying pronouncement, the hungry, fearful eyes of the crowd. These are the last images of the human world you will know before you are plunged into an even deeper darkness. The journey to the hermit's cave is an ordeal in itself. Bound with heavy ropes, you are half dragged, half prodded through the darkening forest by a grim-faced group of village men, led by Father Dietrich and a younger, equally zealous, visiting friar, Brother Marcus, who had arrived some days earlier and eagerly offered his expertise in matters of demonic influence. The Black Forest, even in daylight, is a place of deep shadows and unsettling silences. By night, it is a realm of primal fear, where every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, can sound like the approach of something malevolent. Your own heightened senses, a curse of your illness, are now a torment, amplifying every terrifying sound, every unseen movement in the undergrowth. The hermit's cave is a place shunned by the villagers for generations, rumored to have been the dwelling of a reclusive holy man who went mad, or perhaps, as some whispered, consorted with things best left unnamed. It is a dark, damp opening in a rock face deep within a seldom trodden part of the forest. Inside, it reeks of mildew, bat guano, and an ancient, unsettling coldness. Here, by the flickering light of a few torches, they chain you to a thick iron ring set deep into the cave wall, the cold metal heavy and unforgiving against your raw skin. The ritual of major exorcism, as practiced in the 15th century, was not a gentle process of prayer and counseling. It was a spiritual battle, a direct confrontation with the perceived demonic entity, employing an arsenal of sacred rites and objects designed to torment and expel the possessing spirit. For you, already weakened by your illness, feverish and terrified, it is an unmitigated torture. Father Dietrich and Brother Marcus begin their work. Dressed in their priestly vestments, they chant long passages of Latin scripture, their voices echoing eerily in the confined space of the cave. The words are unintelligible to you, but their tone is accusatory, demanding a relentless barrage against the beast they believe resides within you. They sprinkle you liberally with holy water, which feels like ice against your burning skin, making you cry out and flinch, reactions they interpret as the demon's revulsion. They press crucifixes and holy relics, perhaps a splinter of bone from some forgotten saint, against your forehead, your chest, your bound hands. Their cold, hard surfaces, an added torment. The smoke from the incense they burn is thick and cloying, filling the small cave, making it difficult to breathe. Your lungs, already struggling, heave and rasp. The flickering torchlight casts monstrous, dancing shadows on the cave walls, transforming the familiar faces of the priests into grotesque masks of zeal and condemnation. The village men who accompanied them stand guard at the cave entrance, their faces pale, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and morbid fascination, ready to intervene if the beast becomes too violent. Your illness, with its fevers, its aches, its periods of confusion, does not pause for their ritual. A wave of dizziness might cause you to slump against your chains. A fit of violent shivering might be mistaken for a demonic convulsion. If you cry out in pain from a particularly sharp ache in your joints or from the bite of the cold iron chains, they see it as the beast's resistance, its howls of torment as the sacred rites take effect. Your pleas for mercy, your desperate attempts to tell them you are simply sick, are dismissed as the lies of the demon. Its cunning attempts to halt the exorcism. Vede retro satana, Brother Marcus might roar, his face inches from yours, his spittle flying. Exiab eo, creatura Dei. Depart from him, creature of God, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. The ritual grinds on for hours, a relentless assault on your senses, your body, and your spirit. You feel yourself breaking, your consciousness flickering. The lines between your physical suffering and the priest's spiritual warfare blur into a single, undifferentiated agony. You are trapped, helpless, subjected to a torment born of their deepest fears and most unshakable superstitions. The smell of incense and fear, the priest's chanting voices rising and falling in the oppressive atmosphere of the cave, the weight of the chains, the burning cold of the holy water, the wide, terrified eyes of the onlookers at the cave mouth. These are the elements of your personal hell. Then, as Father Dietrich anoints your forehead with consecrated oil, his voice reaching a crescendo of prayer and denunciation, your body, pushed beyond its limits by illness, fear, and the torment of the ritual, betrays you in a new and terrifying way. A violent tremor seizes you, not the shivering of fever, but something deeper, more convulsive. Your back arches, your limbs stiffen, and a strangled cry, more animal than human, is ripped from your throat as a full-blown seizure takes hold. Your eyes roll back, foam flecks your lips, and your chained body thrashes against the cold stone wall. To the priests and the horrified onlookers, this is not a medical crisis. This is the beast, the demon, fighting back with its full, terrible power. Your violent seizure in the midst of the exorcism ritual sends a fresh wave of terror through the already fear-stricken observers. To Father Dietrich and Brother Marcus, this is not the predictable response of a body ravaged by mundane sickness. It is the horrifying manifestation of the entrenched demonic power they are battling. The beast within you, they believe, is enraged, fighting their sacred rights with a terrifying, supernatural fury. The sounds of your choked gasps, the sight of your contorted limbs and vacant, rolled-back eyes are not symptoms of epilepsy or a similar neurological condition as a modern observer might recognize, but irrefutable proof of your monstrous, unholy nature. The exorcism falters. Brother Marcus recoils, crossing himself frantically, his earlier zealous confidence shaken by the sheer, raw violence of your convulsion. Father Dietrich, though visibly pale and trembling, attempts to continue his prayers, his voice now strained, almost desperate, as he shouts imprecations against the demon he believes is tearing you apart. The village men at the cave entrance, who had been watching with a mixture of fear and morbid fascination, now shrink back, some even turning to flee, their courage evaporating in the face of what they perceive as a direct, overwhelming display of demonic power. Word of your terrifying fit, exaggerated and embellished with each retelling, spreads like wildfire back to Wolftal. The beast almost broke its chains. Its eyes glowed like hellfire. It spoke in a voice, not its own, uttering blasphemies. The fear in the village, which had been momentarily contained by the sentence and the ongoing ritual, now explodes with renewed, uncontrollable force. The carefully constructed authority of Father Dietrich, his plan of exorcism and contained isolation, begins to crumble under the weight of this new, visceral terror. This is where the east wind cloud, that metaphorical storm of communal fury, truly begins to gather its devastating power. Conrad the farmer, his earlier accusations now seemingly vindicated beyond all doubt, becomes a mouthpiece for the village's escalating panic. "Did I not tell you?" he roars, his voice raw with a mixture of fear and vindictive triumph, addressing the frightened villagers who huddle in the square. Prayers are not enough for such a creature. Father Dietrich is too soft, too slow. This beast, this werewolf, it will break free. It will slaughter us all in our beds if we do not act now. It must be destroyed utterly before it destroys Wolftal. His words resonate with their deepest fears. The primal instinct for self-preservation, for the protection of their families and their community, overwhelms any lingering adherence to the priest's more measured, though still brutal, plan. The veneer of Christian charity, of hope for your soul's redemption, is stripped away, revealing the raw, terrified core of mob mentality. The desire for a swift, decisive, and violent resolution becomes an irresistible tide. Men begin to arm themselves, not with the ceremonial caution of a formal guard, but with the grim urgency of a lynch mob. Pitchforks, axes, heavy clubs, sickles, even stones snatched from the muddy tracks. Anything that can serve as a weapon is seized. Their faces, illuminated by hastily gathered torches, are no longer merely fearful. They are contorted with a righteous rage, a desperate bloodlust. They are no longer individuals, your neighbors, people you knew. They are a collective entity, the east wind cloud, a storm of human fury about to break. Father Dietrich, perhaps, hearing the rising clamor from the village, or being informed by a terrified messenger, might attempt to intervene, to remind them of his authority, of the sacredness of the process he has undertaken. But his control is gone. The beast in the cave, your terrifying seizure, has tipped the scales. The villagers see his caution not as wisdom, but as weakness, as a dangerous hesitation that puts them all at risk. He pities the monster, someone might scream. He would see us all dead before he harms his precious, afflicted one. The priest is shouted down, perhaps even jostled, his authority swept away by the torrent of popular fear and rage. You, back in the cave, slowly regain a semblance of consciousness after your seizure. Your body is a landscape of pain, every muscle aching, your head throbbing, your throat raw. You are dimly aware of the commotion outside the cave, the distant roar of angry voices, the flickering of many torches approaching through the trees. A new, more immediate, and far more terrifying dread begins to dawn through the fog of your illness. The ritual of cleansing has failed, not because the demon was too strong, but because their fear has become a demon in itself, a demon that now demands your blood. The east wind cloud has gathered, and it is about to unleash its terrible, pitiless storm directly upon you. The roar of the approaching mob, a cacophony of angry shouts, clanging metal, and the thud of heavy footsteps grows louder, closer. The flickering torchlight at the mouth of the hermit's cave intensifies, casting wild, menacing shadows that dance like devils on the damp stone walls. You are still chained, weak, disoriented from your seizure, every fiber of your being screaming with a primal terror. This is no longer about exorcism, about prayer, about the salvation of your soul. This is about survival, about escaping the teeth of the human wolf pack that is baying for your life. Father Dietrich and Brother Marcus, their ritual abandoned, stand at the cave entrance, trying in vain to reason with the foremost members of the mob, their faces pale and strained in the chaotic light. "Hold, my sons," Father Dietrich pleads, his voice almost drowned out by the uproar. "This is madness. Vengeance is the Lord's. We must not become beasts ourselves." But his words are lost on them. Conrad, his face contorted with rage, shoves the priest aside. "Your prayers have failed, old man." The beast almost broke free. "We will finish what you could not." The mob surges towards the cave mouth, their eyes fixed on you, a cornered animal in their sights. There is no reason left in them, only a collective, murderous frenzy. This is the moment of ultimate terror. But then, as Conrad and the first few villagers are about to push past the priests and fall upon you, a desperate intervention, an unexpected fracturing of the mob's single-minded fury occurs. It is your mother, Matilda. She has followed them, her face streaked with tears, her usually gentle demeanor transformed by a fierce, protective desperation. She throws herself before the mob, her arms outstretched, her small form a fragile barrier against their rage. "Stop!" she shrieks, her voice cracking, but carrying an undeniable power, born of love and despair. He is my son. He is Elias. He is sick, not a monster. Would you murder your own kin based on fear and shadows? Simultaneously, your father, Gregor, a man of few words, but respected for his quiet strength, steps beside her, his face grim, his hand gripping a heavy woodcutter's axe, not as a weapon against you, but as a desperate, symbolic defense of his last shred of family. Their actions, so unexpected, so raw with grief and defiance, give some in the mob pause. To attack a mother pleading for her son's life, a father standing ready to defend him, even if they believe that son to be a monster, is a line that some are hesitant to cross. It introduces a flicker of confusion, a moment of hesitation in their bloodlust, in that very instant of fractured attention, as some of the mob are distracted by your parents' desperate stand, and others are perhaps momentarily shamed or made uncertain. Another, larger commotion erupts from the direction of the village itself. Loud shouts, the clang of the church bell, ringing erratically, as if signaling a new alarm, a different crisis. Fire! A voice screams from the edge of the forest. The old mill is ablaze. The wind is taking it towards the granary. Whether this new alarm is genuine, a coincidental disaster, or a desperate, deliberate diversion created by someone still possessing a shred of compassion or a desire to prevent a bloodbath, perhaps a frightened but resourceful sibling or a village elder who has finally found their conscience. You will never know, but its effect is immediate. The primal fear of fire, of losing precious winter stores, is a powerful distractor, capable of momentarily overriding even the terror of a supposed werewolf. The mill, someone shouts, their attention torn. Our grain. The mob's focus splinters. Some turn towards the new threat, their immediate survival instincts kicking in. Others hesitate, caught between their murderous intent towards you and the urgent need to save their livelihoods. Conrad roars in frustration, trying to keep them focused on you, but the momentum is broken in this sudden, chaotic confusion, with the mob's attention divided, with your parents still creating a desperate, emotional shield. A slim, almost impossible chance presents itself. One of the younger village men, tasked earlier with guarding you, but perhaps less consumed by the frenzy or moved by your mother's pleas, fumbles with the rusty key to your chains. His hands are shaking, his eyes wide with fear of being seen, but he manages to unlock one of your manacles. Go, he hisses, his voice barely a whisper. Run, Elias, into the forest. May God forgive us all. It is not mercy, perhaps, so much as a desperate attempt to avoid further bloodshed or a simple human revulsion at what is about to happen. You don't question it. Fueled by a last, desperate surge of adrenaline, your body screaming in protest, you wrench your hand free. You scramble to your feet, stumbling, disoriented. Your mother sees, her eyes widening, and with a final choked sob, she pushes you towards the back of the shallow cave, where a small, almost hidden fissure, barely wide enough for a man to squeeze through, offers a sliver of hope. Through there, my son. Run. Don't look back. You squeeze through the narrow opening, scraping your already bruised skin. The sounds of the confused, angry mob, your mother's desperate cries, and the distant shouts about the fire echoing behind you, you emerge on the other side of the rock face into the deeper, colder darkness of the Black Forest. You run, blindly, stumbling over roots, branches tearing at your clothes, your lungs burning, your heart pounding like a wild drum. You run from the torches, from the shouts, from the fear, from the monster they made you. You collapse. Miles later it feels, though it is likely much less, at the foot of an ancient, gnarled oak. The sounds of Wolfdal finally faded to a distant, indistinguishable murmur, or perhaps just the ringing in your own ears. Dawn is breaking, a pale, indifferent gray light filtering through the dense canopy. You are free, at least from the immediate threat of the mob, but you are alone, deep in a forest, fabled for its dangers, your body racked by illness, your spirit scarred by an ordeal beyond imagining. You have escaped one death sentence, but another, slower, more solitary one, now stretches before you in the cold, unwelcoming wilderness. The forest is full of its own wolves, and you, Elias, are still, in their eyes, and perhaps now, even in your own fevered nightmares, one of them. And so, Elias, you found a desperate, fleeting freedom in the cold, indifferent embrace of the Black Forest. Your journey through the heart of fear saw you transform not into a literal beast, but from a cherished member of a community into an object of its deepest terrors. You endured the insidious creep of an unknown illness, felt the chilling weight of suspicion as misfortunes plagued your village, and suffered the agony of isolation as your neighbors, your friends, even your family began to see not Elias, but the monstrous shadow of the werewolf. You were subjected to the pronouncements of a fearful authority, the humiliation of a trial by fear designed only to confirm your guilt, the torment of a brutal exorcism, and finally, you fled the gathered storm of mob justice, the east wind, cloud of their collective rage, exchanging one prison for another, vaster and perhaps more perilous. We must ask then, after such an ordeal, could you have truly survived? Perhaps you escaped the immediate violence of the torch and pitchfork, but what of the gnawing illness that still courses through your veins? Untreated, misunderstood. What of the psychological wounds, the betrayal by those you trusted, the horror of being deemed a monster by your own people? Could you survive the crushing loneliness of the wilderness, haunted by what you have endured, and by the terrifying possibility that the villagers' fears, in some dark, inexplicable way, might not have been entirely unfounded in their own minds, given the changes in your body they could not comprehend? Survival is more than breath. It is identity, belonging, sanity, all of which were systematically stripped from you. Such an experience, for any human, medieval or modern, would be a crucible that burns away all certainties. Your perception of community, of justice, of your own body, and even of reality itself would be forever warped. The horror lies not just in the threat of the supernatural, but in the very real, very human capacity for fear to metastasize into cruelty, for superstition to masquerade as certainty, and for a tight-knit community to turn upon one of its own, with such devastating finality. The lines between sickness and sin, between the afflicted and the accursed, would remain forever blurred, a testament to the terrifying power of belief. You draw back now from the shadowed depths of the 15th century forest, from the chill of that lonely dawn, and return to your own time, a world that prides itself on reason, on science, on medicine's ability to diagnose and treat the body's myriad afflictions. The figure of the werewolf may seem a quaint relic of a darker, more ignorant age. Yet, consider this: the fear of the unknown, the tendency to ostracize or demonize those whose conditions, appearances, or behaviors deviate from the perceived norm, the ease with which misinformation and collective anxiety can create scapegoats. Are these shadows truly banished? Or do they merely take on new forms in our modern world? Look closely at how society still sometimes treats those with misunderstood illnesses, mental or physical. How often, even now, does the whisper of something other, something dangerous, cling to the edges of our understanding, if not always voiced as monster or werewolf? The shadow of Wolftal, the fear of the beast within, may be longer and more pervasive than we care to admit. We thank you for walking this path of fear and survival with us at Grim Histories for Sleep. May your own nights be free from such shadows, and your communities sources of solace, not suspicion. If these immersive journeys into the darker corridors of the past resonate with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for future tales. Until we meet again, rest well and question the whispers.